All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andy Dehart. I'm the Vice President of Animal Husbandry and Marine Conservation here at the Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science in downtown Miami. I would like to formally welcome you to this important and timely Live at Frost Science conversation on World Ocean Day, presented by the Miami Downtown Development Authority. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you all to please enter any questions you may have during the chat and throughout the conversation in the comments section. We'll be monitoring those comments and questions and bring those up at the end. We'll do our best to get through as many as possible, but sometimes we get too many questions. As I mentioned, today is World Ocean Day. Frost Science is proud to be an official partner in this global celebration. At the museum, we're joining together with zoos, aquariums, and other museums around the globe to support this endeavor and grow the global movement to protect at least 30% of our land mass and our water mass by the year 2030. A program called 30 by 30. A healthy ocean is a critical part of the solution to the climate crisis, and by supporting 30 by 30, we can protect our planet's life support systems, specifically the interconnected issues of ocean, climate, and biodiversity. You can get involved and join the call for 30 by 30 by joining the 30 by 30 Nature Petition today, and there'll be a link down in the comment section if you guys are interested in helping us support that petition. Museums continue to be a trusted voice and source of information in America. At Frost Science, science education, research, and conservation are at the forefront of our thinking. Our core conservation programs here revolve around habitat restoration through coral restoration and mangrove and shoreline restoration, treasured taxa, looking at specific species of animals like sharks and sea turtles. And we also have a marine exotic species removal program, which is basically an early detection, rapid response to remove non-native fish threats in our oceans so that we don't get the next lionfish. I want to make a special thanks to our partner for today's program, the Miami Downtown Development Authority. It's now my pleasure to introduce Spencer Crowley III, a partner at Akerman LLP and a member of the board of directors of the Miami Downtown Development Authority. Spencer is a land use and environmental lawyer at Akerman, where he chairs the Miami real estate and land use practice groups. In addition, Spencer serves as a Miami-Dade County Commissioner to the Florida Inland Navigation District, known as FIND, where he is responsible for facilitating approximately $6 million in annual grant funding for waterfront improvement projects in the county. During his tenure with FIND, Spencer has assisted the city of Miami with several significant waterfront projects downtown, including the Museum Park Seawall and Baywalk, the FEC Slip, Seawall Baywalk and Mooring Bollards, the Miami Women's Club Baywalk, and the Parcel B Baywalk, the Miami Circle Seawall and park improvements, and more. So welcome, Spencer. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Miami DDA and our chairman, City Commissioner Manolo Reyes, I want to welcome all of you to World Ocean Day. Certainly an exciting day for us here in Miami. As mentioned, my name is Spencer Crowley. I'm an environmental and land use lawyer here in Miami. And I'm also a member of the Downtown Development Authority, where I'm privileged to serve with my fellow city residents and members of the city's business community in order to help make Miami a better place to live, work, and play. Our board is really very conscious of the impact that the ocean and Biscayne Bay have on our downtown. And our DDA master plan actually specifically references the waterfront. And one of our goals is to leverage the city's unique and tropical waterfront environment in order to improve the quality of life of our residents and those who conduct business downtown. Really, you can't think of Miami without thinking about the water. Certainly, the first thing that most people think of is the beach, but the next thing shortly thereafter is really Biscayne Bay, and both are so important for us here in Miami. They're really everything that Miami stands for. The downtown, the water is a major attraction, like I said, to business and residents. It's not, it's a truly unique environment where you have a major metropolitan urban center right on a tropical waterfront environment. But unfortunately, as we know, our beaches and our bay are suffering right now. Our beaches are eroding as they face and sort of take the brunt of sea level rise. And our bay is suffering the impacts of poor water quality that is largely a result of untreated stormwater entering the bay, and as well as sewage spills, some on a massive scale and some on a more gradual scale. But the Downtown Development Authority is really proud to have taken a leadership position on some of these important issues that are facing our bay. And really, most importantly, I think we're proud of the fact that we've taken a very active role in what's known as the Back Bay Study downtown, which is a major sea level rise and coastal storm project that's underway, funded by the federal government and being conducted by the Army Corps of Engineers, really to protect the county from the effects of coastal storms. But as many of you may know, there's a plan that would involve potentially building a big wall to protect downtown. And those of us who live and work in downtown are not really satisfied that that's the best solution for downtown. Certainly, we feel like something needs to be done, but we don't think that our quality of life and environment should be destroyed essentially to do that. So we're very active in that and in other matters, and so we really love having frost within our district and within our boundaries. Frost is such an important part of the city of Miami. It's a part of the science world here in Miami, and bringing so much attention to these really important issues, not just to our residents, but also our children and to tourists who visit Miami. So we're really appreciative to have frost here, and we just look forward to working with all of our other government partners. Irela, certainly at the county, as the chief bay officer. That's a really, really important step for us as a community to make sure that everyone understands these issues, and we're working hard to fix some of the issues. So with that, I just again want to welcome everyone today, and thank you for being involved in these issues. And we look forward to working with our city and county government partners to make downtown and the bay and the oceans a better place. So thank you.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you for your continued support through the DDA. The DDA supports a great deal of what we do here at Frost Science through special mission days like World Ocean Day sponsorship and other cleanup events. We did a cleanup event on Sunday as part of our World Ocean Day activity. The DDA sponsored. You guys are a great partner, and we look forward to building a sustainable future together.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't be happier to present our featured speaker today, Irela Bagué, Miami-Dade County's first Chief Bay Officer. The Bay Officer focuses on water quality issues, policies, and appropriations related to the health and recovery of Biscayne Bay. She acts as an advisor to the County Mayor and the County Commission, and a liaison between county departments, county boards, external agencies, stakeholder groups, local and state and federal governments, and pretty much everybody involved in Biscayne Bay. Previous, Irela chaired the Miami-Dade County's Biscayne Bay Task Force, leading the development of a final report listing a series of recommendations to improve Biscayne Bay's health, and sets a path forward for long-term recovery and restoration. Irela is a former governing board member of the South Florida Water Management District, where she held the position of vice chair. During her time with South Florida Water Management District, she was responsible for kicking off the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, establishing policy for water resource development, flood control, water quality protection, and including serving as chair of the Miami River Commission, leading the Miami River Dredging Project. She's a longtime advocate of Everglades and Biscayne Bay restoration, climate change, and promotes ethnic diversity and inclusion in the environmental movement. I always tell people that I have the best job in Miami, working here at Frost Science as the head of animal care, but Irela's definitely got one of the best jobs as well. So welcome, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Andy, so much. And it's a great job, but it's also a very challenging job. But happy World Oceans Day, everybody. And thank you, Frost Science Museum, for inviting me to share an update on the health of Biscayne Bay and really the actions that we're taking to improve water quality in the watershed. So back in 2017, a group of Biscayne Bay advocates concerned over the significant seagrass die-off in the northern part of the bay hosted the first Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit. And this event brought together academia, environmental organizations, the business community, officials from local, state, and federal governments. And it was really the first time that people had gone together to really focus their efforts on the bay. People have done this in the past, but it was the first time in a long time that we saw all of these folks coming together, really concerned about the health of the bay. And so as a result, the Miami-Dade County Commission took note and created the Biscayne Bay Task Force. And the task force was charged with developing a report with recommendations, as Andy just mentioned. And I happened to chair the task force, and we met over 18 months, heard a variety of presentations from experts and including the general public. And I just want to share some of the headlines that we were dealing with during the time that we were meeting, and really made our work all the more critical, frankly. And last summer, the task force submitted a final report to the county commission. Sadly, that coincided with an unprecedented fish kill and an algal bloom event. And the report focused and recommended an overarching governing and administrative structure that would work together to develop a Biscayne Bay watershed management plan and implement, of course, the task force recommendations. These were recommendations, we divided them into 7 policy themes with a key focus around improving water quality. And of course, the hiring of the Chief Bay Officer stemmed from one of the recommendations in the task force report. Early this year, I had the honor to accept the position offered by our mayor, Mayor Daniela Levin Cava, who is also a water warrior. And I really mainly serve as an advisor to her and the commission. I coordinate with all stakeholders, internal and external, and I advocate for policies and appropriations, really focused on implementing the recommendations in the report, and again, focusing on improving water quality. Since then, I'm happy to report that the County Commission has adopted a number of policies in the report, including a dedicated webpage to provide the public with updates, regular updates on the health of the bay. Countywide, we just adopted a countywide fertilizer ordinance. The mayor launched an interactive Biscayne Bay annual report card, and we're also working on a plan to prioritize septic to sewer conversions in low-lying areas. We've picked up over a dozen derelict vessels, and we've partnered with the state of Florida to implement $20 million worth of water quality improvements right off the bat. So we've been really busy since I got started. I want to take a bit of a deeper dive into some of the water quality problems affecting the bay watershed. The task force, really, when we met and we finished our work, we confirmed that what happens on land ends up in the bay. So I'm going to start with stormwater runoff. When it rains, our stormwater systems work to keep our streets and properties dry. So does a system of regional canals and structures managed by the Water Management District. Now, nutrient pollution from streets carry oil, fuel, fertilizer, trash, all into the outfalls, and they end up in the waterways and in Biscayne Bay. So what we're doing is that we're currently reviewing the way we maintain stormwater systems, as well as identifying innovative solutions to reduce this nutrient pollution entering from at the source, basically. And we're also collaborating with cities and state agencies because it's all hands on deck. I mentioned the Fertilizer Ordinance recently adopted, and that came into effect May 15th and runs through October 31st. And honestly, this is one of the easiest ways to keep nutrients out of Biscayne Bay. And we're really encouraging homeowners and businesses to do their part and not fertilize during the summer months because it's the rainy season. So it doesn't really make any sense. And again, we all have to do our part. Another big challenge facing the bay, septic systems. as I mentioned. We have identified over 25,000 septic systems that are either failing or close to because they're in low-lying areas that are subject to flooding already. We're currently working to identify a variety of funding sources to address this issue. It's happening like daily. I have meetings all the time about this. And we'll be working with property owners to assist with these connections as well. Aging infrastructure is another problem. Raw sewage entering the bay is preventable, and one of my pet peeves. We're already working on expediting the replacement of many of these lines, and these lines are the ones we're focusing on, the ones that pose the biggest threat to Biscayne Bay and our waterways. And again, these are preventable, and we really need to expedite those. Another preventable source of nutrient pollution, marine debris. This has become, as everyone knows, and we're celebrating, World Ocean Day, a global problem. And studies have shown that 80% of marine debris comes from land-based sources. So again, everything that we do on land ends up in the bay and eventually into our oceans. So it's another issue. Just a snapshot on something we've done recently that I'm very happy about. The county, we increased our budget to remove the abandoned derelict vessels all over the bay, primarily in the northern part of the bay. And we created an at-risk vessel task force to enforce and educate boat owners to take responsibility so that they don't end up derelict. And again, increasing public education and working with our community partners is key to protecting our natural resources. And so we're really delighted to partner with the Frost Museum on this particular webinar. I'm really pleased that you've invited us to share this information. And again, looking forward to future events and future collaborations. And now I really want to just share and be absolutely honest with everyone listening today. It's going to take time for us to begin to see the improvements in the water quality in parts of the system, of the Biscayne Bay system. And if the atmospheric conditions are the same as they were last year, meaning heavy rains and combined with high heat, historic levels of high heat, we may experience another fish kill or algal bloom. And that's just a reality of and it's not exclusive to us. We see it all over the state. And the county, I just want everyone to know that in the short term, we're ready to respond. We have a plan to remove the fish if that were to happen, and reporting and coordinating with our partners in the public and in a collaborative way so that, we don't leave, we're organized and we can address this as any other emergency. And again, we have a long-term plan, and that's what, keeps me optimistic. Another thing, before we close, I want to share another optimistic message, because I see that with every challenge, an opportunity is born. And we look to innovation as a key driver to address a lot of these solutions and many of these challenges. And so, with this new emphasis on technology in Miami, we hope to inspire and recruit those blue-green climate tech sector folks and really bring your solutions and help us create high-paying long-term jobs here to really address some of our water issues and really feed off of the beautiful environment that we have here. I'd leave you with some of my personal recommendations on what every individual can do today to improve the health of Biscayne Bay. Again, I talked about the fertilizer and reduce your use of plastic products. I mean, again, it's another issue, trash issue. And, pick up your dog waste. Believe it or not, it's a high source of nutrient pollution that ends up in our storm drains and ends up in the bay. So, and again, to my boater friends, if you're out there enjoying the bay and our spoil islands, please don't litter and leave no trace. It's another issue that we deal with on a constant basis. And again, it'll take all of us together to save Biscayne Bay, but I'm confident that we all will see improvements soon. And I really thank you for the opportunity to share this update with you today.
Thank you, Irela. That was great. I'm not sure. Angela's going to send me some questions from the group, but just some of the things I've had. Obviously, I think it's sometimes hard for folks to understand how fertilizer in their yard can affect seagrass, because I think one would intuitively say, oh, well, the fertilizer helps my yard, so maybe it'll help the seagrass. Can you maybe kind of walk through why that's an issue?
Well, again, it's all about nutrient pollution, right? And so there are high concentrations. There's that, and it depends again on the fertilizer and the amount that you use, right? So what we're trying to do is, because during the rainy season we have natural irrigation, we want to take advantage of that. And also because we have to move water through the systems, as I mentioned before, through our storm drain systems and our canals, a lot of this fertilizer, this phosphorus pollution and nitrogen pollution ends up through these waterways and into the bay. And when you don't have enough circulation or there's low oxygen levels in the bay, it's just a recipe for disaster. And so this is why we're seeing our seagrass die. This is why we're seeing alga blooms. This is why we had the fish kill. And again, this is what people ask me, well, what, infrastructure is infrastructure and you guys are working on that, but what can I do? Well, this is what you can do. And really, take a look at, what you're putting into your yards. And there's tons of information on Florida-friendly landscaping and all sorts of things that we could be doing. We're hosting a webinar on the Fertilizer Ordinance for those that want to join us on Friday. We will be discussing everything and what the do's and don'ts, and hoping that we can continue to educate folks throughout the summer months.
Great, that's fantastic. We, certainly we hope everybody goes to your site, understands kind of the nuances of what's happening. Unfortunately, seagrass is such a critical part of the habitat. It retains soil, it retains substrate. It's a food for manatees. It's a hunting ground and forage ground for small fish. So it's more than just having clean water, having clear water that people can look at from their skyscrapers or their condos. This is essential habitat that also feeds the reef system. So all those people that come down here, spend money in our hotels, come to the museum for the day, they also want to go fishing, they want to go snorkeling, and having a healthy Biscayne Bay is part of having a healthy coral reef system as well.
Agreed. And it's also having a healthy economy. I got to tie that in, because really, I walk around saying that all the time. The environment here is the economy. And seagrass is that source of life. And when you lose it, it's just really hard to recover. And so that's why it's like an all hands on deck right now. And we're excited that we're seeing that now. It's been a long time coming. I've been advocating for the Bay for over 20 years now. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Glad we're getting some headway. We do have one question from the audience. How do hurricanes impact the health of the Bay? And is there anything we can do to help limit any negative impacts?
Well, natural systems and natural infrastructure. When I say natural infrastructure, we're talking about coral reefs and we're talking about mangroves. And so those are our first line of defense for storms. And again, we could use a lot more natural infrastructure along our coastlines to prevent a lot of that storm surge. Again, during hurricanes, and if they're wet, very wet, bringing a lot of rain, again, remember, we have to manage water to keep folks dry. So we're moving water into Biscayne Bay, out to tide constantly. But during a hurricane, we're moving it even more aggressively. So again, if it's dirty water that we're moving because it's full of nutrient pollution, again, it's another problem. And so we need to start working with nature to help nature, right? Nature helping nature. So that's the way I look at it. And so we have to start looking at how can we build mangroves. I know that, people, they grow high, and some people that have waterfront properties, it limits views, but at the same time, you're increasing protection, natural protection for your, instead of spending all that money on seawalls, you can just, plant mangroves and build a little higher.
Right. I mean, obviously, I think that's one of the tools for the future, right? Is living shorelines or partially living shorelines, and how to do that. There's a lot of laws and regulations that affect Biscayne Bay, so we don't want homeowners to just go tear down their seawall and put up mangroves, but do that responsibly using the county and city organizations like Durham, your department as well. But
Correct. There's regulations, of course, when anything you build, and of course we want to limit the impacts to the bay to protect our seagrass beds, right? So it's it's a balancing act.
Okay, great. There, another question: is there any advocacy or policies the general public should be supporting or fighting for regarding the sewage lines? How can an individual citizen help say, "I want this to happen"?
Well, they can actually go to our Biscayne Bay webpage. You can look at the recommendations in the Biscayne Bay Task Force report that we're moving forward. And there are a lot of infrastructure recommendations in there that are moving forward. And, again, call your elected officials, thank them for supporting the report, thank them for moving a lot of these policies forward. And I mean, that's what it takes. And we are advocates, but in greater numbers, we make bigger things happen. And our elected officials do take responsibility and really listen to their constituents. And again, this is something that we need to do in an expedited way. And I'm not just talking about our local officials either. We have an infrastructure bill that's stuck. And so how do we unstick it? Let's, start advocating for that, because a lot of that federal money will come to help us down here with some of the problems that we have.
Great, thank you. Another great question. Obviously, cruise industry is a huge economic engine for us here in Miami. People come here to get on cruises. The cruise companies hire a lot of staff and put a lot of money into the economy here. How is the county working with the cruise line industry to improve and protect our bay? Obviously, these are large vessels. The port has been dredged a few times. There's been some controversy around that. So how is the county working with the cruise industry?
Well, I can only speak to the work I've done with the port right now, and we share a committee on the commission. And I got to tell you, they were one of the first departments that called me and said, how can we help? And so they're willing to help. And in fact, they're gung-ho about shore power. I know that was a big issue early on. So they worked together with our mayor, who's been, leading that with the cruise lines. And so I think we're starting to see how valuable the bay and our natural resources have become to this industry, and how they need to do better. Right now, they're not doing great, honestly, because of COVID. And so when they start, working again and coming back, we're already partnering on how do we educate our visitors when they get off these boats and they understand what they're stepping out onto, and that it is a vulnerable ecosystem and that we should protect it even if we're visiting it. So we're working on a lot of education. We're working very closely together. And so again, all of our departments are at the table, and it's really based on leadership. It's our mayor who's really made the environment a priority in her administration.
Great, thank you. I know you mentioned kind of use of the bay. I mean, one of the biggest user groups is the small boat market, or even the yacht market. One of my favorite exhibits that we have here at Frost Science is a small little focus exhibit about some of the critters that live in the seagrass. Anything from seahorses to little juvenile fish or grown-up fish. I think there's a mindset that people have that seagrass beds are a safe place to anchor. Can you kind of talk about that in terms of kind of how do we address navigational aids, not running aground, how to anchor? Where does that education happen?
Well, that education happens everywhere. But really, I think the boating community, especially the local boating community, because people come and they rent a boat and it's very easy to do, and there's virtually no education when you rent a boat. You just go, right? You don't need a license. It's pretty easy. And so I think there's a lot of responsibility that the boating community needs to have, the local users, as well as the marinas and all of these folks, to take responsibility, because they're not going to have customers, frankly, if the bay becomes a desert because there's no seagrass and there's no fish and to catch, or so you can't recreate in a barren bay. So I think the time has come, and we just passed a resolution where we will be engaging in a county-wide, multilingual, super slick campaign that everyone can use It's right now in its nascent stage. We need to raise money for it too. But I'm very excited about that because, you know, you visit other places and the minute you get off a plane or you get off a boat or whatever, you start seeing the messaging. And that's what we're working on. That's what we're going to work on because, again, people need to understand where they're at and how valuable it is. It's like our Central Park, you know?
Okay, great. Thank you. Some more good questions coming in. We brought up the idea of 30 by 30, and I think South Florida, as a location, is doing pretty good in terms of protected area. We have the Florida Keys, we have the Biscayne Bay National Park. We have, I mean, Biscayne Bay is fairly well protected, but is there, one of the questions, is there any interest in expanding the marine protected areas in the Bay?
There have been, and I know that the national park, Biscayne National Park, has engaged in some of that. We're open to exploring things, but again, those are long-term processes and they're very complicated because it's national, and anything federal takes a little longer than anything else. But I think by increasing education, we can certainly get to where we need to be. And again, there are certain areas in the Bay, and some municipalities have been talking about doing this. So again, it's collaborating and figuring out what can we do, what can't we do as far as limiting access. Again, we have big problems with our spoil islands. People are just, you know, docking boats, partying on these islands, leaving trash. All that ends up in the Bay, and other people have to come and clean it up. It's really a horrible situation. And you know, when things like that happen and they continue to happen, you have to get enforcement in, and then you know block off areas because of bad actors. So you know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to get to that point. So let's educate people and let's make people responsible.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've actually done a number of cleanups on the inside of Hollover Inlet with our team, cleaning up those spoil islands. And I think it's one of those things. You can love something too much, but it is kind of building that personal responsibility, and also I think within protected areas, there's different use, right? I mean, the hope here is that Biscayne Bay isn't off limits to everybody, but there is a mixed use component where people can fish, people can go lobstering, but then there might be some other areas that are a little bit more restricted so that we can get health back and breathe new life into Biscayne Bay.
Correct. And again, it's educating our residents and our visitors alike. And you know, it's not just the folks that live on the coast, it's folks that live inland that don't really understand that what you're doing on land will end up impacting either your water supply, because we rely on groundwater aquifer recharge, and you know, that's an impact to your, you know, health. And then there's what ends up in the Bay. So beach closures. I mean, why would we want that if we're limiting access to people when all we want to do is help people really recreate and enjoy and promote this beautiful place that we live in?
That's great. One of the questions that came through is maybe provide a little bit of context as to how essentially kind of all the systems, coral reefs, seagrasses, and mangroves can help naturally fight sea level rise, as opposed to the giant wall that Spencer was talking about, the Great Wall of Miami that is proposed for our shoreline.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to get into the wall because that's like been blown out of proportion. But again, I think reiterate what I said earlier about how coral reefs, and it's been proven, coral reefs and our mangroves are first line of defense when it comes to storm surge, and they're carbon sinks. Let's talk about the heat factor and why we're experiencing a lot of these you know, fish kills and algal blooms. It's because climate change, and climate change has impacted, you know, our, you know, ecosystem in such a way where we're seeing the negative effects already, and add sea level rise to that. And so, you know, again, mangroves are filters, they're carbon sinks. Our coral reefs clearly are experiencing the impacts of climate change as well. So, I mean, you know, I don't want to get into the doom and gloom aspects of things. I think that we need to take a step back and look at how nature can actually help, rather than just looking at things as great infrastructure, you know, and really, I mean, homeowners along the coastline have an opportunity to really think about that. And so that's another educational component. You know, we're so used to just, you know, putting cement on everything, you know, And when we realized that what we need to do is, if we want to manage water properly, we could probably manage water very naturally, not, you don't have to, put cement all over your driveway. You can have permeable pavement. You can have different options. You can have greener areas. And we're looking at that. The county is looking at that. And we just released our sea level rise strategy, our climate action plan. I mean, there's so many plans, but we're all working together, which and in a collaborative way, which makes sense.
That's great. Great question from the audience. Where can community members sign up to participate in planting mangroves? We didn't pitch this question because we've got our own through Move. But where can people sign up to help?
Well, people can sign up to help. We have many organizations, volunteer organizations. They do a lot of cleanups. As far as mangrove planting, and we get this all the time at the county, a lot of people want to, I'm growing my seedlings, where can I plant them? And sadly, a lot of our areas are already, they're private properties. We have very little public properties on the coastlines. And so, again, that's the challenge. It's like, how do you get folks to, maybe you don't need to spend so much money on a seawall when you can just plant mangroves again and raise your property. You may have to do that anyway.
Right, exactly. I mean, we have our own Move program, Museum Volunteers for the Environment. We have a location on Virginia Key where people can register through Frost Science. They can contribute to either mangroves, but we also do a lot of shoreline restoration, taking away the old, the invasive Australian pines, right, getting back the sea oats and things that as you mentioned, or as Spencer mentioned, the beaches are eroding. We need to go back to the native plantings that retain that beach, retain that dune infrastructure, so that these events, these weather events, hurricanes, thunder, tropical storms, they're not washing away the beach that we enjoy. A question from our audience: can you expand a bit more on the plan in place if a fish kill would happen again this summer?
So it's recovery. So we need to go clean up land side, water side, because if we leave the fish carcasses there, that also creates another problem and continues to deplete the oxygen levels. So the quicker we can get those fish out of the water, the better. And obviously coordinating with volunteers, coordinating with our municipalities. We weren't prepared, let's face it, on last fish kill, because nobody expected something like that to happen. So now that we do have that, we have contractors in place. We will have all the necessary elements. I know that we had some fireboats going out there and, trying to rehydrate. The problem, there's pros and cons to that. I mean, it makes people feel good that something's happening, but frankly, the oxygen isn't getting down below where it needs to go. And we can't put thrusters down there because it'll, again, impact our seagrass. So, we tested that out. That may not be the best solution. The best solution right now is to just, remediate, take all the biomass out. We're talking to folks about possibly composting, using the biomass for composting, which is a great idea, rather than sending it off to a landfill. And so there's a lot of, but we do have a plan in place. And again, it's collaboration, communication, and really the, recovery of the biomass.
Great. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's.
We actually gave a presentation to the commission this morning on that. On our plan.
It's temperature dependent. I mean, it's the issue in the bay is as the water temperature rises, it doesn't retain oxygen nearly as well as cooler water. So when we start seeing these extremes, right, we see very little dissolved oxygen, and unfortunately, fish can't survive in that. And
it's a large watershed. I mean, it's really hard to aerate such a large system. Think about it. It's not a fish tank, guys. Yeah,
I mean, we were called in to supply some air pumps last year, and it's okay. This isn't how this is going to work on the long.
No. I mean, we got to try things when we don't, when it's brand new, and we don't know what's happening. But the best, line of defense is, we're working at it. We're going to work it as an emergency operation like any other, an incident response, and DERM is the point department to deal with that. And again, I'll be working with many of the municipalities and collaborating as I do normally.
Okay, great. Another question, are you going to be working with real estate developers or corporate hotels or similar organizations to help push green infrastructure through? Is there plans in place to kind of address not just the homeowner, but kind of the bigger organizations?
Well, first we need to figure out what those guidelines are going to be, right? Because we do have regulations in place, and we need to actually do a whole review. It's a recommendation in the task force report to create a living shoreline guide. We have to work with our state partners as well. DEP is one of the agencies that we have to work with, and so and that's something that's like on my agenda, like my immediate agenda. We need to start working on that like now, because our cities and the developers are asking for that, and so that's something that's going to happen, and we're going to work on that hopefully shortly.
Great. Looks like one more question. Any cool innovations that can help the Bay that you've heard about?
Yes.
Obviously there's never a silver bullet, but any really cool?
No, but look, for example, sensors are cool. And we partnered, and I got to tell you, I got to give a shout out to Dr. Crowley over at FIU and Dr. Troxler. They are, Dr. Troxler served on our task force, and Dr. Crowley was one of those like frontline guys out there with his drones that are fitted with those sensors, and they were giving us real time, and they still do. They're giving us real time information on oxygen levels so that we at least say, hey, this area is showing, really low levels, so that we at least have a little bit of an alarm, or at least some lead time, so that we can respond, and so we can at least be on we know where the locations are, and we can respond appropriately, right? So that kind of stuff, like information, like real-time information. I've been talking to the Seaworthy collection, the Seaworthy cooperative folks, and they're an incubator for all this blue tech and water tech. And there's a firm that I heard about that has these paddle boards, and they're suited up with some sensors as well, and they measure water quality and so forth. So that's really cool stuff, and it's already happening. Drones underwater that can test, that can take a look at our seagrass and can figure out what's going on underwater. And it costs a lot of money to get scuba folks out there, right? So wouldn't it be great to have little drones on there? And they do exist, because I've seen them in other parts of the country. And so again, I think we're ripe for that kind of and it's not just exclusive to water. I mean, climate, heat sensors, all of that.
So the paddleboard's it's basically user generated data. As people are just having a good time on the bay, they can be contributing data to the
it's citizen science at its best.
Great. So I grew up in the Chesapeake Bay area, and when I grew up, we had an initiative where again, same issues, right? Everything flows into the street drains. And there was a process when I was about 8 years old where they labeled all the street drains. This goes to the Chesapeake Bay. Has there been any talk about that with local street drains and painting those?
We have some of our commissioners who would love to see that. And
so I didn't mean to cause more work for you, but I know it was a very successful campaign.
It's already a request that's happening. But I think that now that we have the fertilizer ordinance in place, and we're putting together this whole educational component, because this is going to be a yearly and annual thing, we can roll that into it. Lawn clippings, for example, huge sources of nutrient pollution, and they just like being blown right into the storm drains. Well, we need to educate folks as to where these things are going and where they end up. And so absolutely, we're looking at that as well, and working with our cities, right? Because we being the county, we manage our stormwater systems in the unincorporated areas, but then we also have to work with all of our other cities so that they can also do their part. And so it's a lot of collaboration and talking to a lot of people all the time.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate having you today. Obviously, we live and breathe on Biscayne Bay. So the folks understand, we actually have a pipe that runs from the museum to Biscayne Bay. We're not an open aquarium system. Water doesn't come in and go back out. But we do use water from Biscayne Bay, and we rely very heavily on having a healthy bay to have a healthy museum, and we're committed to helping educate, helping people understand the science behind what a healthy bay looks like, getting people involved, and we couldn't be happier to partner with the city and the county to help hopefully improve the bay quality.
Absolutely. Well, again, we're all in this together, and I look forward to having meetings in person at the Frost soon.
Absolutely. That's all. If that's the most we do, and be a convener of smarter people than us, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure spending time with you guys.
Happy World Ocean Day. We're glad you could be here.
Likewise. Thank you.